Hi everyone. Thanks so much for listening and connecting today. I am excited to continue to talk about my favorite subjects, which is thinking about ways that we can engage more with nature in our lives and have more opportunities to really tap into the heartbeat of Mother Earth. And I see this as more of a remembering than a learning, that it's sort of in us, in our ancestral lines, and that it's more of an opportunity to just slow down and connect. So thanks so much for doing that with me today. I am excited to talk about something that's been rolling around in my mind a little bit, in particular this winter, which is the subject of how in our modern lives we have become very attuned to and comfortable with living in a very small range of comfort. So this really digs into the basic Buddhist idea that when we overly attach to what we perceive as good, or what we perceive as bad, that leads, that by doing that clinging, that attaching, that cloying onto these feelings, that it leads to suffering. So when we observe and watch and feel our feelings, like when there's so much goodness coming up in in a beautiful day that we're experiencing, for example, that we just sort of observe and feel the sensation of that, but that we're not wanting it to last forever, which is sort of our tendency, which is the natural human tendency. And then when we experience the sad, the hopeless, the hard, that we also are not so, it's our tendency to maybe think that will last forever. So we're just sort of noticing the feelings, the ups and downs of our sensations, which is just a part of our human experience. So the way that this relates to our experience of nature is that we tend to only want to get out when the weather's good or when it feels just right to us. We only want to get out and explore or be outside in those in kind of perfect conditions. I hear this all the time from folks who are like, yeah, I have this great walking or hiking ongoing practice, but it's been rainy lately. So good opportunity to dig into that a little bit further. There's a lovely author, speaker, Andrew Holochek, who teaches a lot about dream yoga, but he also teaches about this same idea of just feeling our sensations for what they are and kind of playing around and being curious about when we're trying to hide away from something. Like, for example, we're moving from our car to our house and it's raining, and it's our natural tendency to hide away, it's raining, run to the house. We all have this tendency. So instead, just playing around with, well, what does it feel like to do the opposite of that? What does it feel like to be open and expansive and just be curious about the feelings of that? And there might be some newfound beauty in opening up to an experience that you might have shied away from before. So this has been on my mind a lot. I live in Portland, Oregon, and we have had, according to some surveys, one of the worst winters of any city in the U.S. this winter. We've had all sorts of weather, and just an opportunity for me to ponder and be curious about how to still get out, how to still connect, and how to really listen when I start to feel like I'm fritzing at the edges and not getting out enough, not connecting enough, not expanding and experiencing the outside world. So I'd love to share 3 ideas with you along these same lines of what I just mentioned. So the first one is playing around with the thermostat of your house. So we have definitely in our culture gotten really used to a very small range of setting on our thermostat, 70 to 72. So playing around with what does it feel like to maybe feel a little more uncomfortable? Not in a horrible, sadistic way, but more in a curious way of, how does that affect my body? How can I find other lovely, cozy things to counterbalance feeling cool or feeling really hot or sweaty? So maybe expanding your thermostat. And there's actually some research around how this positively impacts our body. So the negative aspects of when we try and live in a t-shirt 24/7 the entire year, and I play around with my kids on this idea of go put on a sweater and some socks, that it's okay to have sensations and to feel those feelings, whether they be, any part of that range. So, so playing around with that yourself, you know, uh, maybe pushing the limits of that just a little bit and being curious about it. I think our ancestors, I feel like, they were able to have just a lot more experiences. They were hardy and hardworking, but also potentially, I'd like to go out on a limb and say that they were, more connected too. So the number 2 thing is playing around with that idea that I mentioned earlier. Being curious about your sensations and being curious about testing your comfort levels around, for example, the rain exercise. So being out in the rain, or being out in the sun, a hot sun, or any other kind of more intense sensation that will make you more curious versus closed off. So anything that we have this immediate like go to a ball reaction versus something that is sort of heart expansive, that we're continuing to want to approach our lives with more expanded heart, and sort of, I guess, a metaphor that we can use in all sorts of ways. So the third thing is, if you have a garden, maybe starting to think about really digging in the dirt a little earlier than you might usually. So I had the experience the other day of getting things ready. I'm thinking about starting some peas and lettuce and spinach, and in the course of my hands completely freezing after 15 minutes, we experienced a hailstorm, a clear sky, a rainbow, the whole gamut. Not being afraid of weather, really just trying to enjoy the beauty in that. And if you are a gardener, and if you do have the opportunity to just start a little earlier, expand your horizons of what you might usually do. Summer gardening is fantastic, but there's so much that can happen at the front end and back end of that, and you might just, as a practice, explore that a little bit more. So digging into testing and moving and being curious about your comfort zones, and how that allows us to just have a little bit more time in the experience of all aspects of nature and her beauty. So how she looks, how a forest looks in the winter versus the summer. And right now we are moving in that transition time from winter to spring. And by being outside and not being afraid to get outside, it really allows you to observe the shoots coming up and observe the changes in the trees and bushes, and just really having that opportunity to connect when it might feel like you don't want to. So I hope that you have an awe-inspiring day. Thanks so much for being here with me, and I look forward to seeing you again.